The courtroom was silent until it wasn't, as whispers turned into gasps, and the judge's gavel struck down on one of the most aggressive legal tactics seen in this case, so far blocking Blake Lively's attempt to subpoena Justin Baldoni's lead attorney in a move that legal experts are calling a major turning point. This single decision has set off a chain reaction that no one could have predicted, a legal domino effect, with implications far beyond the courtroom. Blake Lively, who has maintained a carefully crafted public image, is now on the defensive, not just in court but in the court of public opinion. Her team filed for sanctions almost immediately after the subpoena denial, suggesting a high-stakes strategy built more on public pressure than legal strength. But what exactly is happening behind the scenes? What pushed the judge to step in and block a move so central to Lively's legal game plan? And why did her legal team react with such urgency, turning to a sanctions motion that some are calling a Hail Mary play to regain momentum? This isn't just another celebrity lawsuit. It's a high-profile legal war that's drawing attention from major law schools, ethics watchdogs, Hollywood insiders, and social media giants. The stakes are personal, reputational, professional, and potentially career-ending for everyone involved. And while the public watches with curiosity, the courtroom is now a battlefield where every filing, every objection, and every headline carries explosive weight. What we're witnessing may be the unraveling of a case that was supposed to strengthen Blake Lively's claims, but is now raising serious questions about her legal team's strategy and long-term vision. This is the story behind the ruling, the fallout, the silence from Baldoni's team, and the growing concern that the fight is no longer about justice, but about control, power, and fear of losing it all. The courtroom was filled with an eerie silence as the latest bombshell exploded into the already dramatic legal saga involving Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni. In a move that few saw coming, the judge has officially blocked the subpoenas that were aimed at Justin Baldoni's lead attorney, sending shockwaves through both Hollywood and legal circles alike. This unexpected ruling came just hours before Blake Lively's legal team filed a stunning motion for sanctions, a move that has left insiders speculating about desperation strategy and the possible unraveling of her entire case against Baldoni. The blocked subpoenas were initially filed as part of Blake Lively's aggressive legal maneuver to pressure Baldoni's camp into either backing down or revealing internal strategy, but the judge's ruling was clear, concise, and unwavering, stating that the subpoenas posed undue burden and appeared more as a tool for intimidation than legitimate legal discovery. The tension in the courtroom was palpable as the order was read out, and according to multiple people who were present, the expression on Lively's face shifted from control to visible frustration and disbelief. This wasn't just a procedural setback. This was a public judicial rebuke, a signal that the court was losing patience with what it may be viewing as increasingly erratic legal tactics from Lively's camp. Legal experts quickly began weighing in, suggesting that Blake Lively's strategy may now be entering dangerous territory. One senior litigator who has been following the case closely described the ruling as a body blow to Lively's credibility, saying that once a judge begins blocking your discovery attempts, especially when they involve the opposing counsel, it suggests the court is no longer seeing your actions as reasonable or proportional. Lively's legal team, however, wasted no time in pivoting. Within the same day, they filed a motion for sanctions against Baldoni's attorney, alleging misconduct, interference, and what they claim was deliberate obstruction of the legal process. The filing itself ran over 70 pages and included multiple exhibits, screenshots, and even snippets of communications that Lively's lawyers insist show a pattern of evasion and disrespect toward the court. But despite the length and bold language of the filing, early reactions from legal analysts have been mixed. Some are questioning the timing and tone of the sanctions motion, especially coming directly after the judge blocked the subpoenas. It has the appearance, one expert noted, of retaliatory lawyering rather than grounded complaint. The media reaction has been swift, with headlines capturing the chaos of the moment. Some are portraying Lively's legal team as increasingly desperate, while others are defending her right to pursue every legal avenue available. But beyond the headlines, there's growing chatter about the deeper implications of this turn of events. What does it mean when a judge blocks a subpoena against an attorney? What does it signal when a motion for sanctions follows so closely behind? And what message is being sent by Lively's team to both the court and the public at large? Sources close to the Baldoni team are reportedly feeling vindicated. The attorney at the center of the controversy issued a brief statement saying that they had always conducted themselves with integrity and professionalism, and were confident that the truth would emerge in the end. In the meantime, the tension continues to escalate. And those watching the case closely are warning that this could be the start of a much larger conflict between the two camps, with each side now appearing to dig in their heels and prepare for a scorched earth battle in court. What's becoming increasingly clear is that the case is no longer just about the original claims and defenses. It has now become a war over narrative leverage, and who can gain the upper hand in the court of public opinion and the courtroom alike. As we dive deeper into this unraveling legal saga, let's explore exactly how we got here, what led to the judge's decision to block the subpoenas, and why Blake Lively's team may have believed that such an aggressive move would work in their favor, and perhaps most importantly, what comes next as this case lurches from one dramatic twist to another. Let's go back to the initial legal filing that sparked the attempt to subpoena Baldoni's attorney. Blake Lively's legal team had claimed that there were communications between Baldoni's counsel and third-party content creators that they believed could reveal a coordinated media strategy aimed at undermining her public image. They argued that these alleged interactions were not protected under attorney-client privilege, and that obtaining them was essential to proving their broader theory of reputational sabotage. But Baldoni's lawyers fought back hard, calling the subpoenas an unprecedented overreach and a blatant attempt to weaponize the discovery process to silence critics and dig into protected legal strategy. They argued that no court should allow one party to subpoena the opposing counsel without clear, compelling, and specific evidence of wrongdoing, and in the absence of such evidence, the subpoenas should be quashed. The judge, after reviewing the filings, agreed, siding with Baldoni's legal team and noting that the subpoenas lacked the specificity and evidentiary support required to overcome the legal protections usually afforded to attorneys in such high-stakes litigation. This ruling immediately reshaped the tone of the case, where once Blake Lively appeared to be in control, using her legal power and public image to direct the narrative. Now she was facing real resistance from the court itself. And that resistance sent a strong message. The law has limits, and those limits cannot be bent even in high-profile celebrity disputes. The blocked subpoenas also had the effect of energizing Baldoni's base of supporters, who took to social media almost instantly, praising the judge's decision and pointing to it as proof that Lively's legal approach was finally being held accountable. Hashtags related to the ruling began trending within hours, and legal commentators from across the spectrum started dissecting the decision. In real time, the broader question now being asked is whether this ruling will cause a strategic pivot from Lively's team, or whether they will double down, as they seem to have done with the sanctions motion. If the latter, then the case may be entering a more volatile phase, where legal tactics become as much about public performance as actual litigation, a dangerous place for any legal proceeding and an even more precarious one for the reputations of those involved. It's worth noting that motions for sanctions are not routine. They're serious filings that accuse the other side of violating legal or ethical rules, and they can have lasting implications. If granted, they can result in fines, restrictions, or even dismissal of claims or defenses. So the fact that Lively's lawyers have chosen this path, and chosen it immediately after their subpoenas were rejected, speaks volumes about their current posture. In this case, they are not backing down. They are escalating. But with that escalation comes risk. And the biggest risk of all is alienating the very judge who will eventually decide the most crucial questions in the case. Already, there are whispers that the judge may begin to impose tighter restrictions on both sides in order to restore order and reduce the courtroom theatrics. One legal insider noted that when a judge sees motions flying back and forth with increasing speed and intensity, they often respond by clamping down, requiring both parties to slow the pace and focus on the actual legal merits instead of the spectacle. And make no mistake, spectacle is what this case has become, with A-list names, media attention, and courtroom drama unfolding almost daily. It's a perfect storm of celebrity litigation and legal brinkmanship. And while that may be good for ratings, it's not always good for justice. What comes next is anyone's guess. Will the sanctions motion be taken seriously by the court or dismissed as retaliatory noise? Will the blocked subpoenas lead to a reassessment of Lively's strategy? Or will her team push even harder, hoping to overwhelm the court with pressure and filings? Or could there be a surprise twist where both sides are called in for a stern judicial conference to cool the temperature and bring the case back to center? These questions remain unanswered. But what's certain is that the ruling to block the subpoenas marks a turning point. and it has shifted the energy in the case away from Lively and toward Baldoni, even if only temporarily. And in a case like this, momentum matters. Appearances matter, and public reaction can often bleed into courtroom dynamics in subtle but powerful ways. And as both sides prepare for the next round of motions, hearings, and potential depositions, the stakes continue to climb, not just in terms of legal outcome, but in terms of legacy, reputation, and public trust. Blake Lively's legal team now faces a crucial decision. Do they attempt to recover from the ruling by recalibrating their tactics, or do they continue with an aggressive approach that has now drawn the scrutiny of the court itself? Whichever path they choose will define the next phase of this high-profile legal war and possibly its ultimate outcome. Because in the end, it's not just about who wins or loses, it's about how they fought, what they revealed, and what they risked, to try to shape the truth in their favor. And as we'll explore in the next part, the consequences of this week's developments are already rippling across Hollywood law firms and media boardrooms alike, setting the stage for even greater clashes to come. As the dust settles from the courtroom shockwave that saw the judge block subpoenas aimed directly at Justin Baldoni's attorney, the spotlight now turns to the fallout behind the scenes, where sources close to the legal teams reveal rising tensions, frantic strategy sessions, and a growing fear that this case is spiraling far beyond what either side originally anticipated. Insiders who spoke on condition of anonymity describe a frantic mood within Blake Lively's legal circle, noting that the blocked subpoenas were not just a legal tactic, but a cornerstone of her broader strategy to reframe the narrative and gain access to what she believed was damming off-record coordination between Baldoni's legal camp and external parties, particularly content creators, legal consultants, and even influencers who had discussed the case publicly. The goal, it seems, was to create a new line of argument in court, that Baldoni's side was manipulating public perception in a way that legally crossed the line. But that entire strategy was derailed the moment the judge issued a sharp and direct ruling, rejecting the subpoenas as overbroad, unsupported, and legally dubious. What followed was an emergency meeting, according to one source, involving Blake herself, her legal team, and multiple PR advisors gathered in a private suite at a high-rise in Beverly Hills, where the conversation reportedly turned to damage control, not just in court, but across the media landscape. This is when the idea of filing a sanctions motion against Baldoni's lawyer reportedly took root. Some advisors questioned the optics, fearing it would look reactive. Others argued it was essential to restore the perception of strength and send a message that Lively's team was not retreating, but instead doubling down within hours. The motion was filed 70-plus pages long and filled with detailed allegations ranging from procedural obstruction to misleading statements, and even improper conduct during private negotiations. The language of the motion was intense, accusing Baldoni's attorney of tactics that disrespected the court, undermined due process, and in their words represented a pattern of calculated resistance. But legal experts quickly noted a problem: the motion appeared to lack clear evidentiary anchors that would typically justify sanctions, and instead read more like a passionate rebuttal than a precise legal condemnation. In other words, it looked political more than legal, and that perception carries risks. Judges do not look kindly on motions that seem performative or retaliatory, and already there are quiet signals from court clerks and insiders suggesting the judge may issue a show cause order requiring Lively's team to justify why sanctions were appropriate at all. This would be an embarrassing twist, forcing the team that filed the motion to now defend the motion itself. But that may not be the only risk, according to legal sources who spoke to reporters. The blocked subpoenas and now the sanctions motion have placed increased scrutiny on Lively's overall legal strategy. Some veteran attorneys believe her team is operating on an increasingly fragile foundation, relying more on spectacle pressure and narrative warfare than concrete legal positioning. And in the high-stakes world of celebrity litigation, that's a dangerous game. One that can backfire dramatically in front of both a judge and the public. What's also adding to the pressure is the mounting media coverage, which has largely framed this episode as a misstep for Lively, with headlines ranging from courtroom chaos to legal hail. Merry legal commentators have appeared on nightly news segments and viral live streams dissecting the failed subpoena effort and speculating whether the sanctions motion was a smart tactical pivot or a flailing counterpunch. Meanwhile, the Baldoni team has remained unusually quiet with no media appearances or flashy statements, just a brief press release reaffirming their trust in the court and commitment to professional ethics. This contrast in tone has not gone unnoticed among observers who point out that sometimes the side that says less ends up being more persuasive in the eyes of the law and public opinion. At the same time, social media has erupted with commentary. Hashtags about the case are once again trending. And while some remain loyal to Lively and defend her right to aggressively pursue justice, others are beginning to question the wisdom of her tactics. The phrase overreach is being used more and more, and when that becomes the dominant narrative, even sympathetic audiences start to lose faith. This is especially dangerous for a public figure like Blake Lively, whose personal brand has long been built around composure, integrity, and quiet strength. And now that brand is being pulled into a legal storm that shows no signs of slowing down, what complicates matters further is that multiple legal advocacy groups are beginning to watch the case more closely, particularly in regard to the attempt to subpoena opposing counsel. Legal ethics organizations have already issued informal statements, warning about the dangerous precedent such actions could set if allowed to proceed unchecked, and while the judge's ruling effectively shut down that pathway. At least for now, the very attempt has sparked a wider debate in legal circles about how celebrity litigation is increasingly pushing the boundaries of discovery privilege and the use of the court system for public narrative warfare. One professor of law at a prestigious university put it bluntly, saying that when subpoenas are used to fish for public relations ammunition rather than legal truth, the system itself becomes compromised, and that compromise is now being debated in law schools, bar associations, and media outlets across the country. But while the academic and legal communities dissect the broader implications, the real pressure is mounting for the legal teams themselves, with new court dates approaching and depositions rumored to be scheduled. Soon both sides must now recalibrate and prepare for a potentially grueling next phase of litigation. And make no mistake, depositions in a case like this will be explosive. Insiders suggest that key witnesses may include former staffers, digital consultants, and even individuals from major entertainment platforms who have commented on or analyzed the case on air or in writing. This wide net of witnesses will open the door to even more scrutiny and the possibility of new revelations, some of which may not be flattering to either side. The judge has already signaled that the court will not tolerate gamesmanship and is expected to impose strict parameters on deposition conduct and scope. But even within those boundaries, fireworks are expected, particularly if the underlying tensions remain as high as they are. Now the big question remains, will Blake Lively's team continue to pursue a high-risk, high-visibility approach, or will they pull back, regroup, and aim for a more traditional litigation strategy? Some believe it's already too late for a reset, arguing that once you've filed motions for sanctions and tried to subpoena opposing counsel, you've committed to a path that's hard to walk back. Others say a mid-course correction is still possible, but would require a major change in tone and leadership from within Lively's legal camp. As for Baldoni, his silence may be strategic, but it also puts pressure on his team to remain above reproach. Any misstep now could undercut the advantage they've gained from the judge's recent ruling, and as both sides move closer to what many believe could be a trial, neither can afford to make another mistake. The stakes have never been higher, not just in terms of potential legal liability or reputational fallout, but in the broader message this case sends about how Hollywood power players use the legal system to fight personal battles and shape public perception in an age where content moves faster than court filings and where live streams often carry more influence than legal briefs. This case has become more than a lawsuit. It's a media war, a reputational chess match, and a cautionary tale all at once. And with every new development, every rejected subpoena, every motion for sanctions, the story only becomes more chaotic, more unpredictable, and more significant for anyone who watches how celebrity and law collide. And as we prepare to cover the next chapter, we'll look at the ripple effects now moving through the industry, the legal system, and the media world, as new names may be dragged into the spotlight and even bigger revelations threaten to erupt in court. As this explosive case escalates with no sign of slowing down, more and more questions are being raised about the internal dynamics driving both legal teams, but especially those within Blake Lively's camp. Sources familiar with the matter have described intense divisions behind the scenes between her legal advisors and her personal PR consultants, with some advocating for a quieter, more restrained courtroom posture, while others push for a loud, aggressive approach designed to control the narrative and apply maximum pressure both in court and across the media landscape. This internal struggle came into full view the moment the judge blocked the subpoenas, and Blake's team immediately filed for sanctions. The very speed of that response hinted at deep frustration and perhaps a lack of consensus. Some believe the sanctions filing was a pre-planned backup strategy ready to deploy if the subpoenas failed. Others argue it was hastily put together and filed in a rush to show strength after a very public courtroom defeat. Regardless of which version is true, the consequences are now playing out in real time as the court begins to show signs of skepticism toward Lively's legal approach, and legal observers continue to warn that a sanctions filing without overwhelming evidence could come back to haunt the party that filed it. And while the courtroom drama captures public attention, insiders are increasingly focused on the potential fallout for Blake Lively's public image, particularly among fellow industry insiders. One high-level studio executive, speaking anonymously, expressed concern that this legal fight is beginning to overshadow Lively's brand, once known for grace, elegance, and discretion, and is now morphing into a symbol of controversy, control, and litigation. The shift in perception may not yet be irreversible, but each move from here will matter significantly. And that's especially true as new filings are expected to be submitted. In the coming days, according to leaked reports obtained by media sources, Justin Baldoni's legal team is preparing a formal response to the sanctions motion, and it is expected to be a strong and detailed rebuttal. Insiders claim that the response will not only address the specific allegations, but also raise questions about the motivations behind the sanctions motion itself, possibly framing it as an attempt to distract from the failure of the subpoenas and to bully the court into revisiting a settled issue. If this happens, the battle could shift again from a fight over conduct to a deeper debate over courtroom integrity and legal ethics, and at that point, the judge may be forced to intervene more directly to restore order and define the boundaries of acceptable litigation behavior. Already, legal professionals are speculating that the court may call for an emergency hearing or at the very least issue a formal directive, urging both sides to reduce inflammatory filings and focus on the merits of the case. The reason this is so important is because this case is no longer confined to legal documents or depositions. It is being fought and analyzed in real time by millions of people across social media, news, broadcasts, podcasts, and commentary platforms. And when legal tactics are used that appear performative rather than purposeful, it raises uncomfortable questions about whether the courtroom is being used as a stage and whether justice is taking a backseat to spectacle. Meanwhile, both camps are reportedly gearing up for what could be the most consequential depositions of the entire case. Multiple sources have confirmed that subpoenas have already been sent to at least 6 individuals who may be called to testify under oath in the coming weeks, and while their names have not been officially released, rumors suggest that they include publicists, digital strategists, and even consultants connected to both camps. What makes this phase so crucial is that depositions, unlike filings, involve actual testimony under oath, and that testimony can be used to support or refute claims in real time, which means that any contradiction, exaggeration, or omission could instantly shift the momentum of the case. And based on how this case has unfolded so far, no one expects these sessions to be quiet or uneventful. In fact, several legal analysts are already warning that the depositions could become flashpoints, triggering more motions and possibly even media leaks. Especially if testimony from one of the witnesses contradicts public claims made by either side, this is the moment in litigation where speculation begins to meet sworn truth. And in cases involving public figures, the difference between those two things can be massive already. Some observers are speculating that the true target of the original subpoenas wasn't just to gather information, but to intimidate those who might be called to testify by showing that Lively's team was willing to go after anyone, even opposing attorneys. If that's the perception, then the stakes of the blocked subpoenas become even greater, because they may be viewed not just as a failed legal tactic, but as part of a wider strategy that is now under a microscope. And the microscope is only growing more intense in recent days. Additional organizations have begun to weigh in on the public implications of the case, with at least one national legal watchdog group submitting a letter to the court expressing concern about the direction of the litigation and encouraging the judge to remain firm in protecting the integrity of the proceedings. Such third-party interventions are rare and signal that the case has crossed into territory that affects broader legal principles, not just celebrity reputations. In response to these developments, it's believed that Baldoni's legal team is working quietly but methodically to compile every piece of correspondence, documentation, and internal record that could be used to push back against the sanctions motion, and perhaps go even further to argue that Blake Lively's legal team is misusing the court process for purposes that go beyond what the law permits. One strategy reportedly under discussion is the possibility of filing their own counter-motion, not for sanctions but for protective orders that would shield certain individuals and communications from what they describe as escalating attempts to chill speech and manipulate discovery. If such a motion is filed, it could flip the momentum again by shifting attention back to the legal merits and framing Lively's actions as overbearing and excessive. This back and forth of filings, counter motions, and legal chess is now dominating the landscape of the case, and every move is being parsed not just by lawyers and judges, but by fans, journalists, commentators, and Hollywood insiders. And in this climate, every misstep carries consequences not only in court, but in careers and perception, and in legacy. And that may be the part of the case that is most dangerous of all, because in Hollywood, where image is currency and reputation is everything, the courtroom is no longer just a place of justice, it's a platform, and whoever controls that platform often wins more than just a legal battle. They win the narrative, and right now, that narrative is spinning out of control with each passing day. New headlines, new speculation, and new stakes emerge, leaving both sides scrambling to catch up and trying to avoid the next explosive twist. As this legal drama continues to spiral with each motion and counter-motion, the core of the case seems to be slipping further away from the original claims and deeper into a battle for control, reputation, and leverage. The decision by the judge to block the subpoenas against Justin Baldoni's attorney did more than stop a single tactic. It sent a message that the court would not be used as a tool for intimidation or narrative control, and in response, Blake Lively's team escalated with a sanctions motion that now faces intense scrutiny, both from the bench and from the broader legal community. What happens next could reshape everything: the upcoming depositions, the possible hearings on sanctions, the looming risk of judicial intervention, and the increasing pressure from media watchdogs all add layers of uncertainty to an already volatile situation. Insiders from both camps are now preparing for what they describe as a long and difficult road ahead, and the public is beginning to see the cracks in the armor of a high-profile case that once seemed to favor Lively, but is now turning into a question of tactics, ethics, and credibility. This is no longer just a fight between two powerful figures, it is a window into how celebrity legal battles unfold, how they are fought in courtrooms, on red carpets, and across headlines, and how quickly a strategic misstep can change the entire course of a public war. The question now is not just who will win, but who will last, who will maintain integrity under pressure, and who will come out the other side with more than just a legal victory, but with their public trust intact. As we await the next phase, the story is far from over, and the chaos has only just begun.